Good evening. I am Sarah Lewis, the Director of Planning and Zoning and co-chair of the Urban Design Commission. This evening's meeting is now called to order. The time is 6:03 p.m. And it is, oh my goodness, it's May 25th, 2021. Year seems to be flying by. So this meeting will be held remotely pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatone's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Urban Design Commission will be conducted via remote participation. We can provide an audio recording upon request after the meeting. So the members of the Urban Design Commission present are Deborah Fennick, Frank Valdez, Andrew Aubaugh, and Tim Talon this evening. Also with us are Andrew Graminski from the Planning and Zoning Division, and acting as co-chair with me on behalf of Louisa Oliveira is Courtney Kirk from the Division of Public Space and Urban Forestry. So while our agenda this evening begins with some general business, there are some comments that we need to work through, and so I recommend that we postpone the meeting minutes approvals until our next meeting. So I am not sure if I need a motion on that or not. So let's do one anyway. Can I call a motion for waiting until next meeting for the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Andrew. All right, roll call vote. Deborah?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
And Tim?
Yes.
All right, thank you. It's unanimous. We will take up the meeting minutes at the next meeting. So the next item on the agenda are, we have 2 items for 74 Middlesex Avenue this evening. These are 2 different cases. One is for the building and one is for the civic space. As the commission does like to hear both cases when they're abutting each other, the building and the civic space will be discussed separately, but both presented this evening for your conversation. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to coordinate who from the applicant team will be presenting to.
Sarah, for this project, I'll be recusing myself, so I'll be dropping off.
Okay, all right, thank you. So noted. Tim Talon is recusing himself from this project.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good evening.
You too.
For those who are presenting, could you please raise your hand with the raise hand feature? And I'll make you a presenter.
And can they turn on their cameras?
Yes, and please turn on your cameras if you can.
Thank you.
All right, so whoever's presenting first, you should be able to share your screen.
We'll give our team a minute to get on here.
All right, no worries.
There was a little lag to get the presenting rights. There we go. All right.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to pull this presentation up really quick. It's not as intuitive as I thought.
Oh, could I confirm of the presenters who will be sharing their screen? That's helpful.
So David Manfredi will be presenting the full presentation, and then it will continue to Mik-Young Kim.
Great. Okay, David, try
Can
now.
can you add Anthony Galuccio to the presenters? I think he's having trouble connecting. here.
Absolutely.
Raise my hand. Thank you. And then that's the last person from our team. We should be set.
Okay.
Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Can I make that go away?
Yeah. There you are.
We can give a quick kickoff while Anthony's getting started here. Just a quick intro. And there's Anthony. So jumped the gun. Anthony, we can see you. While he's sorting out audio, I'll give a quick kickoff. So my name is Ryan Souls, and I'm joined here with Tammy Copson from Greystar. We are the development directors on the 74 Middlesex project. So nice to meet you all this evening. We've been working on this project since last summer when we stepped into the deal that you're probably familiar with in a former iteration. We stepped in with the goal of really focusing on developing a purpose-built life science office building that will target best-in-class tenants that we think want to be in Somerville and see Somerville as an emerging cluster for these tenants. So we're very excited to kind of present our findings here. I'll hand it off briefly to David Manfredi with Elkus Manfredi. We intentionally brought in Elkus Manfredi here. They're a leader in both high-rise lab office development and also, contextual design and planning within urban environments. So, really brought both skill sets to the table. And we also brought in Mik-Young Kim Design, and Mik-Young's with us here this evening, who's, a renowned landscape architect and known for bringing health and well-being into the community. And the civic space and the neighborhood park adjacent to the civic space are kind of an important part of this project, although it'll be talked about separately, but really a nexus for our project and for the overall kind of Assembly Square community and creating that connection to East Somerville across or under the highway. So I'm excited to have them both present here, and I'll pass it over. It looks like Anthony might have dropped off, so I think David, you can probably just jump in here.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen and everyone can hear me. This is David Manfredi from Elkus Manfredi Architects. I will be responsible for part one, and Mik-Young Kim will be responsible for part two. It, as you can see by the numbers, is a long presentation, but we will try to move through it as quickly as possible. But having said that, please feel free to interrupt and ask questions as we go along. Our team is made up of the professionals that you see on the screen, and it is a group of professionals that has worked together on a number of, as Ryan said, high-rise lab buildings in and around Kendall Square in Boston, and in fact this team has traveled with us and in other locations. I think you are all familiar with the site. 74 Middlesex Avenue is located in the Assembly Square Master Plan District between Middlesex Avenue and I-93 on a site that is largely empty today with one small building on the site. It is, we believe, absolutely pivotal location in the heart of what continues to become a really quite exceptional new district, mixed-use district, transit-oriented district, a prototype for work like this around the country. You can see its proximity to the MBTA station, its proximity to East Somerville by access underneath I-93, and the advantages that the site has in terms of its visibility from 93, its accessibility on Middlesex, as well as the opportunity to develop a front yard, a front lawn, a front park that will allow the building to present itself, but also allow the building to be a kind of convening space for the life science industry in Somerville. We have studied our planning decisions in the context, obviously, of Assembly Row, but also in the context of future development, proposed future development that surrounds us. And obviously, the advent of urban planning throughout this part of the city is transformational in terms of the walkability, the streetscape, the ground floor uses, and you'll see as we walk through the building that we have followed those same kinds of urban principles for transit-oriented design. Giving you a little bit more context, you can see the 6-minute walk to the Assembly T station, the 2-minute walk under I-93 that gets you to East Somerville on a site that.
David, this
Yes.
is Sarah Lewis. Because this is all to do with the master plan, which has already been approved, can I ask that you move through this quickly and get to the building and the civic space in more detail?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
You know where you are. And so I won't belabor any of these connections. We are shaped by our context and the environment. So let's get to the building. And I'll start with the site, and you can see the property line in a red dashed line, and you can see the civic space that McYoung will address, which spans both the public way and the private holding of the site itself, but obviously will be designed as in terms of a single idea. And I won't belabor these. You know the site, you know the importance of the connections, and you know what's on the site today. So part one is the building, and the building proposal that we're going to show you tonight is subject to the Assembly Square Mixed Use District. It's subject to the high-rise lab building requirements, and obviously subject to the requirements of public realm, specifically civic space. Very simple on the left, very simple comparison of the Assembly Square Mixed Use District Master Plan special permit decision that was the previous proponent. You can see that in column 3 from the left, and then adjacent to it, the proposed project. And I don't think there's any surprises here. There's no change in the lot area. The open space, none is required. 20% is provided. The civic space is 26%, and obviously complies to the requirement. The floor area ratio is reduced from the previous project, and the overall building height is reduced from the previous project.
Yeah, if I may, just for the commission's edification, this project wouldn't be here if it was zoning compliant this evening. So I'm hoping that we don't need to linger on the zoning compliance part of it as a discussion point.
As I said, we are located on Middlesex, between Middlesex Avenue and I-93, between McGrath Highway and Kensington Avenue, and you can see the outline of the civic space. And the total floor area of the floor plates less than 30,000 square feet. You can see where the building and the property line coincide on the north and on the west. We are within the property line on the east and obviously on the south. And this is the approved massing envelope from that previous submission. It is the maximum massing envelope as we have conceived this new scheme. This may be the most relevant of the, and it'll be the last comparison I make to the previous. But you can see again, parking, the exact same number at 350 spaces on 4 levels. The zoning height is 235. Floor area ratio is 12.1. Our floor plate is less than 30,000. It is office lab and it will be LEED Platinum. And so we'll start with massing options, and you're literally looking at the drawings that we created, I guess sometime almost a half year ago, in terms of the massing options that we studied. And from left to right, and I'm going to show you these in more detail, but I did want to show you the original sketches that then evolved into a series of conceptual designs. And you'll notice that the site footprint actually has 2 parallel sides and 2 non-parallel sides. North and south are parallel, east and west are not parallel. This is a lab building, and the metrics of lab I'll talk about as we go through the building, and particularly the floor plans, but functionally has a center core, and then optimally has largely column-free space from that center core to the perimeter. Multi-tenanted lab buildings rely upon flexibility, diversity of different kinds of tenants and users. And so what you're seeing in orange is that core. And our attitude was to think about the building, or our first approach was to think about the building in kind of 3 parts in plan: a center core, on north, I almost said rectangle, but it's not, and a south package of floor plate that optimizes the flexibility of those floor plates. If you look at option 1, you see that the building the proposal there is very sculptural. It's kind of chiseled. It doesn't reflect the specifics of the floor plan or the site configuration, but does make an object, a singular object. Option 2 is a similar floor plan in terms of its large organizational principles, meaning that center core and that usable space north and south, but divides in massing, divides the massing into 2 parts. A southern part that wraps around 3 sides of the building, a northern part that wraps around the north and the east of the building, and creates this kind of 2-part composition with the planes slightly split and overlapping. And then the third scheme, which is our preferred scheme, really connects the plan and the massing. It is a 3-part composition, and as I described the floor plan is a 3-part composition. It has a center core, and then it has these kinds of, I'll call it a ballroom of column-free space, and you'll see it's not entirely column-free in a moment, but that follows the geometry of the site. And so if option 1 is singular in its massing, and option 2 is 2-part massing, option 3 is 3-part massing, and follows the floor plan and follows the organization of that floor plan, and creates, we think, very handsome vertical proportions. And you'll see as we manipulated those proportions over the evolution in thinking, we extruded them, or they actually descend from north to south, creating an even more distinct profile. You'll also see that we lifted the building above a base. Here it's only 1 story. You'll see as it evolved that became 2 stories, but that's in response to 2 thoughts. One is that we did want to make the building as welcoming as possible at the base, but we also wanted to kind of lift ourselves up as we abut I-93. And so here are the 3 massing options as they evolved over time. And you can see basically on the south, looking to the southwest corner of the building, that's I-93 in the foreground. That's the park space also in the foreground. That first option 1, which I've called chiseled. The second option, which is the 2-part composition made up of these gently curved spaces on the east and the west, and then the 3-part composition that follows the geometry of the site, but also locks the massing into the footprint of the building, lifting the building up 2 stories and separating ourselves visually from I-93. I'll show you very quickly, I'll show you a series of views of each of these 3 options. Option number 1 from the southeast with Middlesex in the foreground. Option 1 from the southwest, looking across I-93 with the green space in the foreground. Moving same views for option 2, Middlesex in the foreground, and then overlooking 93, and then the preferred option, option 3, which is the 3-part composition, which you read quite distinctly as you travel north on Middlesex, and you read very distinctly on the west side. From the west, obviously, I'm much higher than I-93, but the massing evolves out of the plan organization. And so I'll as I started, massing option 3 is our preferred option. It is the option that we have continued to evolve, and I'll show you here that evolution. And so if you think about, obviously, these little sketches that have I-93, this is Middlesex and Kensington on the south, our civic space, which spans across, and then the park space that you will see in just a few moments. And you see the footprint, the property line, and if I dropped a very simple rectangle as an organizational frame onto that footprint, you can see that we then pull the north rectangle to the east, pull the south rectangle to the west to conform to the site parameters, and then kind of pull them apart a little bit. You will see that, and this is very simple single line sketch, but we separated them. We created this kind of reveal between the parts, and you'll see that as it has evolved as well. And then we staggered the heights from south to north. And really all of this is happening, it starts happening on the 16th floor, which is the last occupiable floor, and then in the configuration of the mechanical penthouse spaces. And then you'll see, as we worked in collaboration with McYoung, the idea, because of this green space and because of the civic space and because of our desire that this building in its most public spaces on the ground floor becomes this kind of convocation space for life science in the whole district, that we thought about the outdoor space and the indoor space very much connected, almost sliding into the base of the building. And then we also thought of that green space reappearing on the 16th floor of the building, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then the last of the big massing moves was then to take that top, and of course, acknowledging the all of the zoning guidelines to create a base, a middle, and a top. We took that top that already had profile and we rotated it. That's what those arrows mean. We kind of rotated it about a pivot point to accentuate the top of the building. And so this diagram shows you the primary planning and massing principles of the building. That separation into three parts, the lifting of the building at the base, the creation of a base, a middle, and a top made up of the top occupiable floor and the mechanical floors of the building. That brings us to our volume organization. You're looking at a view from Middlesex, looking northwest, and so the 993 would be here, Middlesex would be here in the foreground, and the organization of the building about a base, a middle, and that kind of rotated top. But you can also see the facets of those three, I'll call them ballrooms of space, and then the separation, which you'll see a little bit more detailed in just a moment. And we recognize the requirement that buildings of 5 or more stories should be divided into these three parts, and that those parts shouldn't shift up or down. We don't have a lot of balconies and terraces. We have one very significant terrace up on the 16th floor of the building. It is within the envelope of the building, although it is outdoors. Extends, there's a canopy that extends out a little bit beyond that edge. So it is recessed. It doesn't overhang property lines. It's within the property line, and follows the precepts here for high rise for protecting spaces. Obviously, it's on the south side of the building. It will get great sunlight, daylight, and terrific views to the south. Building section based on that preferred massing from the bottom up, the 4 levels of parking, which are 350 parking spaces. On the south side of the building, a very tall ground floor that gives us a significant lobby space and retail space along Middlesex, a tall second floor. Our typical floors are 3 through 15, and then that's the, I think I told you that was the south. I'm sorry, that's the south. That's the lobby, that's the park. And then a larger floor at the top, and our 2 mechanical floors above. And you can see how that outdoor space is kind of carved into the massing of the building. As I said before, the building is 235 feet tall as measured by Somerville zoning. That ground floor is 24 feet, the second floor is 20. All of the typical middle floors are 15 feet, and then we are 20 feet at 16, and our 2 mechanical floors are 20 feet as well. I'll take you through just a couple of the floor plates and point out a couple of simple things. So you can see the lobby, not at all oversized, but and obviously this is a diagram and not really a plan, but the attitude of bringing both the geometry of the building to the park space and some of the geometry of the park space into the building. The front door is at the southeast corner on Middlesex and Kensington. All of this southern edge is that 24 feet floor, on the whole first floor is 24 feet floor to floor. You can see this is There's an entrance here on the southwest corner. This is our bicycle storage entrance into the core of the building. We have planned this with a through lobby, acknowledging that there's not a real destination yet on the opposite side of McGrath Highway, but anticipating that over time, remember back to that larger locust plan that we looked at, that there will be. And so that through lobby will give you a vista through the future development over time. Retail on the corner of McGrath and Middlesex, anticipating that this could be 2 tenants, but we don't really know that yet. So active edges on McGrath on the northeast, all along Middlesex, and then all along the south side of the building. The west side of the building is all of our infrastructure, as is the northwest. And so this is all of our internal mechanical space, transformer, switchgear, back of house space, lab support space, our loading docks going directly into service elevators. I will tell you almost as an aside, but that our direction or our basis of design from Greystar from day one was to design the most robust infrastructure of a lab building in the Cambridge-Boston market. What that means is a lot of things that aren't terribly visible, but it means air capacity, it means power, but it also means loading and vertical circulation capacity that will support the widest range of science that could occur here. You can see that we've got a main building entry, as I mentioned. On the south side, we've got a secondary through block connector. On the north side, the purple lines represent the loading dock access. The blue line represents our garage access that ramps down and into the floor plate, and the green arrow represents our bicycle access in and out. So you come in, store your bike, come into the lobby, go past security and turnstiles, and you're into the core of the building. Obviously, the retail tenants have entrances on the street, and we have back of house entrances as well. This is a typical floor plate, and again, now you can see a little bit better that we've been true to that idea of those 3 big packages of space. We pull them apart with these deep reveals. I didn't point it out on the ground floor, but it's actually, we use that deep reveal on the ground floor as our outlet for our garage exhaust, but just a way to reinforce the kind of meaning of that reveal. As you know, the cores of these buildings are big, and this core is big, anticipating the work that will be done in the building. And this is a test fit. This is not a real tenant. There are no real tenants yet, but you can see how the building is organized and the way many of these tenants are organized. That while you say that these buildings are maybe 60-40 lab to office, or 50-50 lab to office, or 40-60 lab to office, what that really means is that they're most typically organized that way, floor by floor, as opposed to 2 floors of lab and 2 floors of office, because the people that are doing the bench work are also the people who have some kind of office or desk space on the same floor. And so the floor plates are typically organized around lab benches, lab support, and then office that supports the lab. I will mention this because I think it's important to the exterior organization of the building and its expression, and also to the building envelope. Lab buildings are typically organized, and you notice the high floor-to-floor heights compared to an office building. They're organized on a 33-foot planning module, structural module, excuse me, a 33-foot structural module in that direction. And then that 33, from a planning point of view, breaks down into 3 11-foot planning modules, which represents the center line of a lab bench to the center line of a lab bench. You'll recall that in a moment when I tell you about the organization of the exterior of the building, but you'll see it right here that what happens is that we think it's appropriate that there is a, like the massing connects to the ground floor organization, the interior, at least if there are lab benches, connects to the building envelope and the metrics of the building. The 16th, I won't take you through every floor. I'll jump to 16. And at 16, the top floor of the building, we have leasable space, but we also have a series of common spaces for the tenants in the building, including fitness, which is in this green color, and all of the support for it, a series of amenities, and that outdoor terrace, which is facing south. And then the mechanical floors, and you can see how that twist or pivot at the top of the building, go back and forth a little bit. You can see how that pivots, especially on the south, but maintains the perimeter of the building. And we use those notches expand in another way to define the top of the building. And all of this, everything that's in gray, is not occupiable space. It's all of our air handling equipment and cooling towers, emergency generators, and this low roof, because this is stepping up. This low roof is a green roof. I'll get to the facade design. And so the building is clad largely in metal and glass, and you'll see we propose to manipulate that metal, fold it in different ways, as you'll see in a moment, and then obviously high performance. This is a LEED Platinum building, a high performance building envelope, and then that metal is aluminum, so it will be a painted aluminum finish. We looked at 3 facade options for the middle of the building. I'll come back to the base in a moment, but the middle of the building obviously being those floors from 3 to 16. And again, acknowledging and supportive of 2 things: your design requirements, but also the requirements to produce a very high performing building, meaning LEED Platinum leads us to ratios where we want to have significant opaque envelope as well as transparent envelope. So we looked at 3 options. I'm going to show you these in these kind of they're almost mock-up elevations. It would be a big mock-up, but and then I'll show you in the context of the full building. And our goal, and again, coming out of your the sections of the requirements, is that there is a depth to these facades, that there is an order to these facades, meaning that there is both a preference for a vertical and a horizontal order. What you're looking at is obviously our 15 feet floor to floor, and then our 11-foot. It's not exactly center line to center line, but it's if I took edge of pier to edge of pier, that's 11 feet, and that aligns with what you saw in the plan. There is vision glass to just above the floor, and then to a height of 10 feet, and then shadow box above that. And so the first one we called the horizontal fold, and you can see that we're taking a panel, a metal panel, we're folding it around. It's a 2-story panel. It's folded at its midsection and then alternated with the fold inside and the fold outside, to accomplish a couple of things. One, obviously to fulfill the guidelines, to give the building envelope depth, but also to recognize that we've got this wonderful solar exposure as the sun moves around the building. These planes will pick up the sun in different ways. We believe that the finish on this metal is a metallic bronze color, and we'll get the kind of differences that you see even in our model here as the sun moves around the building. Option 2, we call the vertical fold. You can see we're taking those piers, we're folding it vertically. It looks like every one of those is different. They're really not. It's all the same dimension, but basically it's in all of these, it's 4 feet of opacity and 7 feet of glass, but actually because of the shadow backs, there's horizontal is opaque as well. And these are folded vertically. And then the third is what we call the diagonal fold, and we're taking again that same overall dimension that are 11 feet on center. We're folding it diagonally, and then basically alternating these in these 2-story sections, and flipping them up and down, and also alternating them so that if that's the center line here, that's the center line there. And I'll show you, well, you can see what it means right here. These are actually all the same forms, the same folds, but upside down and then staggered. And so very quickly, and obviously I should have said this, but you probably read it, this is our preferred option. And so a view from 93 in option 1, you can see the 2-story base, you can see the middle, the outdoor terrace space, and then our mechanical levels 1 and 2. And you can see this kind of grid that's made up of metal and shadow box, and the folds that are horizontal folds. Our option 2, which was the vertical folds, and not too different a system, and quite a different look to the building. And then our third option, which is our preferred option, which is the diagonal fold staggered, meaning this is the diagonal fold. It's 2 stories tall, and you can see it staggers as we go up the building. And all the same things about base, middle, and top, and the pivot at the top. Very quickly, I'll show you again option 1 on the west looking east. And here you can see where we created those recesses or big reveals in the building, and when we got to the mechanical floors, we made them even bigger. Option 2 with the vertical fold, and then option 3, our preferred option, with the diagonal fold. When we get to the top of the building, we did a series of options on the top of the building. So this is floor 16. That's the last occupiable floor of the building. That's our terrace floor, and our amenities, and also has some lease space on the north side. And then there are 2 levels of mechanical space above, and we looked at this in a couple different ways. We looked at this with a flat panel, relatively flat panel. We looked at it, and we also looked at it with round columns, round column covers. This is actually our 33-foot structural module, so there's steel in there, but a round column cover. We looked at option 2, which was to take the vertical folds and bring that into the top. It was not our preference because we didn't have, in our opinion, we didn't have enough field, meaning this works because you've got 14 floors of it, and the pattern has kind of enough run. But having interrupted this with the terrace, that felt sort of incomplete. And then our preferred option was to acknowledge more positively that there's a top to the building, and that you can see here in our little plan that the panel, and these are actually kind of shingled, vertically shingled panels. There will be, and I'll show you on a plan, where there will be louvers. They're largely on the north side of the building. Where there's a louver, there will also be a panel. It will be perforated, and the actual louver will be behind. Louver for fresh air will be behind, and so the louver won't be visible, but the air will penetrate through, and you can see how those kind of lap in a vertical way, and that's our preferred option. Now I'll go down to the bottom of the building, and you can see that we've got a couple of options here as well at the base of the building. And you're looking at the southeast corner. This is Middlesex, and the entrance to the building, a canopy at the second floor elevation, a slight setback that defines the base of the building, and our entry on this corner. These are our retail tenants, and I'll come around and I'll describe that in a moment. And so again, option one, the two-story base to the building, the canopy that we've got a couple of different options on, and obviously we're trying to fulfill the requirements, both the high-rise and the Assembly Square requirements that again are premised on the desire to create, I'll call it kind of defined frames that give the building structure and scale, as opposed to an all-glass curtain wall building. And so we think this does fulfill those design guidelines. And I should have just mentioned what happened here. There we go. The entrance, the entrance itself is obviously a vestibule, recognizing that we want to avoid touching as many common surfaces as possible with sliding doors and direct entry into our lobby. And then option two, that second floor is discontinuous. So we frame this to highlight the entrance and create the two-story base, but our two-story base is actually not continuous. It wraps around the corner, and it reappears on the north side of the building. And then our preferred option is actually not too dissimilar to option one. I'll go back there and show that to you if you want to see that. There's option one. I should have pointed out our column covers here and that are round, and then here we brought the folded metal down all the way down to the ground. The canopy runs through the two-story expression on the south side of the building and turning the corner of the building, and then on the north side of the building as well. And this is our preferred option. The main entry option, which will show you again the desire and the guidelines to frame an entrance, and we've created a very simple frame with a side and a kind of lintel. and we investigated looking at the scale of it. Remember, this is 24 feet floor to floor, and we looked at it as kind of almost a half scale. We looked at raising it up and creating a transom above, and then we looked at the larger scale of the frame, literally pushing that up to the underside of the canopy. And this is our preferred version, given the scale of the building. The entrance is not overwhelming, in terms of the scale of the building, but we wanted it to still be important. And so it is the full height, or we propose that it is the full height to the underside of that canopy. I'm going to show you two different canopy options and our preference. Our first option is to take that canopy that runs around the building and literally let it run all the way continuously, and you see it here in this dashed line in that plan, run continuously around the perimeter of the building. And it provides weather protection to guests below, and also provides some mitigation for wind, and you can see it wraps around the building. The alternative, which is our preferred, is to use the canopy as another device to reinforce the geometry and the massing of the building. So it comes around and ends on where our reveal is above, and each one of these becomes separate. So there's a canopy on the south side that wraps around the first of the ballrooms of space. There's a second canopy and a third canopy that wraps around the north side. The other advantage is it gives each of these tenants a little bit more separation and identity within the overarching envelope of the building. Okay, storefronts and retail signage, and we did several options here. We did an option where, and these are based on our preferred canopy options, that is the segregated canopy as opposed to the continuous canopy. And our storefront option really has to do with signage, creating a kind of lip on that canopy that puts signage here. Our reaction to this was that it was high, far from the guest, and not visible if you're under the canopy. Second option is in the transom of the glass. And then the third option is actually under the canopy, so visible in line with the fresh air louvers for those individual storefronts. So visible from the street, visible to the pedestrian, under the canopy, pin-mounted letters that would be mounted on the frame or on the louvers for that fresh air. And again, that's our preferred option. And then coming around at the base on the west and the north side, I'm sorry, this is the north and this is the west side, which is our access to parking, and then our access to loading docks. Again, the separated canopies that reinforce the geometry of the building, and again using that as wind mitigation, and this line wrapping around all four sides of the building. And then, I'm sorry, the first one was actually connected. The second one is separated, and that's our preferred option. And consistently, our signage then is our preferred option, which is on the louver of the fresh air, and these are real louvers here. In one case, fresh air to the retail. In this case, fresh air to our parking. Talk about the elevations of the building, and I'll come back to what I said about the plan organization repeated now in the elevations of the building. And so again, you can see that 2-story base, the canopy at the second floor, but that extended glazing at the base. There is, if you follow the column covers on the steel, that's our 33-foot structural module. That 33-foot structural module divides into 3 11-foot planning modules, 5 feet of metal and 7 feet of glass. If you look very carefully, you can see a faint line at every floor. That's actually the separation between vision glass and shadow box, and so that also is opaque and insulated and creates this high performance triple glazed building envelope. You can see now clearly on the east side are deep reveals that are then doubled when we get up to the penthouse and create that kind of vertical proportion that we like very much. These are not all coplanar, as you can see here. They kind of ratchet around the building and follow the property lines. And then the north side and the west side of the building. Okay. I'll try to do and there's a lot of text there, but I assure you I'm going to do it very, very quickly. Some of those zoning compliance, obviously.
David, we don't need to go through zoning compliance. Okay. And the presentation has been about an hour right now, and normally they're about 20 minutes. So I want to make sure that we don't get shortchanged on talking about the civic space.
Okay, I'm going to go there right now as soon as we catch up. My last slide, materiality. I just wanted to show you the parts and pieces. There's a granite base that wraps around just at the base of the glazing that runs around at the base of the building. The wood soffit on the underside of our canopy. The body of the building is metal panel and our vision glass. And some long views that I'll click through very quickly. And our sustainability, as I said, we are LEED Platinum. I'll just point out the important data here that we're estimated to achieve 38% energy savings over ASHRAE standards. And you can see all of our commitment to air quality and acknowledging the site and its proximity to Route 93, our MERV pre-filters and filters in the building. And with that, now I am at my last slide, the sustainability scorecard. You can see that we have 81 points in our high achievable column. We will aspire to even more, but we've got plenty of backup in order to assure that we exceed the 80 requirement. And with that, I will stop. And we can go directly to Mik-Young Kim, and or we can stop, your preference. Should we go on?
Roll on.
Okay. Mik-Young, I will click for you.
Thank you, David. So you've seen this slide. So I'm Mik-Young Kim, I'm a landscape architect working closely with Elkus Manfredi on this and David. So what we're going to start off by talking about in this first section of the presentation is just the area that you see in the red dotted line. So it's the building lot property line. And I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. It's pretty simple if you move forward to the next slide, please. These are the constraints of the site, overall site itself. I'm going to kind of jump ahead and talk about this kind of 20-foot, you see in blue, the 20-foot wide emergency vehicle access. This is something that we've integrated into the project as we've worked closely both with PSUF and with the city of Somerville and the community. But the area that you'll see in design is really that kind of dotted line that you'll see again in this area. So next slide, please. And as David had mentioned, you know, there was a real desire to create a kind of inside-outside relationship. So you'll see this green buffer that emerged through our process along Middlesex Avenue, and it kind of flows directly into the building itself. I think this idea of creating connectivity and this, I think David called this site as a kind of nexus. And so we're really interested in these kind of pink major lines that come through that talk about how pedestrians might move through the site. Next slide, please. And so this is really the area of the site. We were really, our work, the foundation of our work is based on the master plan requirements as well as the green scorecard requirements, and we're fully in compliance. You can see the site is very tight. Along Middlesex Avenue, there's a lot of green space with a retail outdoor seating area that corresponds with commercial and retail usage within the building itself. There is outdoor seating, flexible seating that we're hoping is this place where both lab workers and office workers can meet with the community and meet there at all times of the day. You'll see, I'll point this out to you in the future, that there's you're protected by that kind of deep canopy structure that David pointed out in the presentation. And then along Middlesex Avenue, we know that that the city is developing a cycle track and pedestrian streetscape master plan for all of Middlesex Avenue. So we expect that we'll be kind of coordinating that. But for now, we wanted to show our commitment to having a cycle track. This is what, according to the master plan and the green scorecard, we're calling it a furnishing zone, but in general, we have bike parking in these kind of peach color areas. And there are trees, the tree pits comply with the requirements of the streetscape master plan as well, and the green scorecard in terms of the volume of soil. So the site is bounded by Middlesex Avenue, McGrath, and Marginal Road. And you'll see these are the three sections we'll be showing. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So section AA, you know, this is the spirit of what we would like to, of our intentions in the design. And as we move forward, we're looking forward to working with the city of Somerville and understanding how we integrate a cycle track, 6-foot sidewalk, the cafe seating, and to create a green buffer at each kind of condition. So that's that section that you see down here that's noted AA. And then BB, section BB, is along McGrath Highway. It's a much simpler sidewalk adjacent to the building. And then the next slide shows you along the loading dock, along CC, along Marginal Road, that relationship between the building to the right, the sidewalk, and the entry points for parking and loading. And then the next slide, please. So, you know, our aim is to create a really vibrant streetscape and to use, we have a commitment to use all native plants, and most of our trees are high value, and all of our trees are low VOC trees. So to create all season interest and to really, you know, bring in perennials and ground cover in this area. Next slide, please. As you can see, the site is very tight, and so we were working with Sarah to make sure that we're in compliance with the green scorecard, so that there is a green roof, and David had shown that earlier up on the top floor, and also a green canopy, which has 4.5 inches of soil depth and will be a sedum green roof, whereas the green roof on the roof is about 10 inches deep in soil depth. So we'll have a lot more flexibility on what kind of planting we can put up there. Next slide, please. So just some precedent images. This is actually in the seaport on the left, showing the kind of green roof along the canopy structure and the kinds of planting that we can integrate with the mechanical structure up on the top floor. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through this, Sarah, unless you feel like we need to, but really, we submitted this last week. There's some tweaks to this presentation from our submission last week, and we will resubmit this, but all of the landscape is in compliance with the green scorecard, both at the ground floor, and then you'll see in the next slide on the roofscape. So you need all of these in order to, on this very tight site, to be in compliance. I believe that's my last slide. So I'll be presenting the civic park, the civic neighborhood park, after we discuss this piece of the building.
And that concludes our building section.
Great, thank you. I'm going to actually ask the commission, would you like to discuss the building now or hear the civic space presentation first?
I say we should go with trying to, that's my opinion, to go through the building presentation right now and then wait to see where we land on the civic space. I mean, it is, 7 o'clock at this point, so let's give time to the building and the landscape component of that, and then see where we are for the civic space.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions at this time for the team? Just to remind you, so there are, we do have to take votes on the preferred massing scheme, and as they've shown you, multiple options for the different pieces. I think we should probably vote on each of those, and then over the guidelines overall. David, could you go back to the 3 massing schemes?
Yep, I'm trying to get back there.
No, that's fair enough. Thanks.
So David, that's if you start with 27, slide 27, I think that that would be a good start for the conversation.
Be there in just a minute.
You can just type it in the prompt in the PDF. I think it'll take you directly to it if you put 27. The page. But maybe you have something different.
Yeah, it's not, I tried, it's not going there, but I'm almost.
But you had it. Awesome. I wanted to start on this as a conversation point, David, because I was initially very intrigued by the breaking of the massing in this option and the way that the building was broken down. And I think that, I mean, obviously, I understand that this is a diagram and it's a beginning of an idea, but I think that as you kept moving forward in the presentation, this stepping down became a challenge, it seemed, in the section in elevation to continue through, and it somewhat seemed to get lost. And when I was looking at, if you go to the section in page 31, you can begin to see kind of like the building stepping kind of begins to get lost because of the reality of the penthouse. And then I was also trying to figure out where the green space was located on the roof, which I would assume is either on level 16 or is it on the roof where the solar panels are?
It's right here.
It's right
on-
there.
Yes.
So I guess I was very intrigued by the massing of option 3, which is your preferred option, which is also an option that I say that I really like from the massing that you presented. But I think that when you begin to see images like that, when you took it further, it begins to get the hierarchy of the levels begin to get lost in the massing. And I just wanted to bring that forth and to see if any of my colleagues felt the same way on it, and the observation of the loss of that seemed to me, because obviously at ground level it's very hard to perceive, and it's a perception that you obviously get perhaps maybe when you're on 93 and you're at a larger, more larger urban scale, that you begin to see how the building is being broken down. So I understand how you would lose it at the pedestrian level and at the urban level, but it was a very nice massing that I thought it would have been very nice for it to continue. So I wanted to bring that as my first point of discussion, as I actually did like your facade hierarchy and your preferred option in massing.
Well, I'll just quickly respond. I don't disagree with you at all. The diagram is a diagram, and that was our goal. And of course, as you begin to lay out all of the stuff that you have to get up here, it didn't have the amount of difference between the steps that we had originally hoped for. And of course, some of this is, I'll take you here. The other thing about these buildings is that the core shell building provides all of the base building air and power and emergency power. The tenants then, because they are so different often in what they do, bring ancillary equipment, and so you're leaving space, and almost always it fills up. But I hear your point, and it may be that we I don't know that we can push down, so maybe we have to pull up a little bit, but you make a good point.
Because it was intriguing. And when you look at the facade options that you're providing, so if I move to the facade options, and I would tend to agree with your preferred option, and now I'm on like slide 46, which is, facade option 3. I do like the idea of the staggering component, and I do like of the undulation of it, and I think it begins to work, and that rendering in itself begins to show some of your original intent of the breaking of this mass, and I think it's elegant in that. So, I know that it's a diagram, I know that it's a reality of what a penthouse is, and I know that it's a reality of a lot of things, and I liked your initial approach, and it was very intriguing that you were really trying to break this, lab building or penthouse to create this interesting crown that read differently, almost like 3 buildings colliding together. It had just some interesting readings to it. So I kind of like that. And I don't know how you begin to introduce that again so that it reads, but this reads well in the break of the 3 buildings as you were doing in a vertical way. You're doing it's very elegant in a horizontal way. So those components, I think that I liked a lot, and I wish that the vertical articulation of it would have continued well. But I do like your middle facade option, your preferred option of the facade. I think that it is, yes, very successful, and it plays very well. And I think that when light hits it, it's going to be very elegant in the way that shadows happen and all of that. So I do like it, and it doesn't make it seem like it's a lab building, which I think it's kind of like the thing that you want. It's like you get so typical of looking at lab buildings, and like they get so monotonous and like repetitive. So there's an elegance to it. So I appreciate that on the facade.
Thank you. And clearly we're trying to break down that sense of the bulky lab building.
Yeah, so I sort of went along with all of your preferred identified options, with one exception, and it was well, maybe two exceptions. This is a top I'm not sure about at this point, but I thought the massing was successful, and then as you went through them, I thought that they were adding up to something that supported the massing idea, and I can imagine making sense in the context as it's evolving. The one that I'm not so sure about is actually the facade options. And I find the neutrality of this one just scales up the building instead of, I guess the one that I found most successful is option 2, which has a more vertical emphasis. It's sort of, and there's maybe, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. This is something that's double story reading the verticality is something that the Partners building does. But I'm curious why, why your team has selected or identified option 3 as the preferred. I feel like there was some logic to a lot of the other options, and this one seemed like just a preference. Maybe it's just a visual preference, but I'm curious.
Well, it was a visual preference. We were also, though, we are excited about the idea that this kind of diagonal fold will be very legible and different at different times of the day, because what in straight elevation would look like a simple rectangle. When the sun hits it, you'll get what we're seeing here in this drawing. You'll get the read of those triangles, but it will keep changing. And of course, on that south elevation, it's going to read across that elevation, from almost from sunrise until, I don't know, I guess about middle of the day and a little beyond. And then it's going to calm down on this south side, and become quite regular. And we thought that was the most interesting kind of response to the sun or reaction to sunlight. We like this too, by the way. It was our second choice. And I'll be absolutely honest with you, we ran into some issues here of constructability that were troubling. While 3 was definitely our aesthetic preference, 2 became difficult for a number of reasons. And we're actually, if you're interested, we're actually creating a shelf here that raised a number of issues about snow and ice and trying to make the building completely weathertight.
So yeah, and I don't completely understand what's happening with the verticals in all of these, but whether some of the dynamism of the third one in terms of the, I feel like it doesn't have a bias to it. It's very neutral, and that sort of adds to the bulk of the building ultimately. That's why I like the vertical, so I'm wondering if there's something, whether, well, I don't know, maybe that starts to confuse everything quite a bit. I'm looking at this on a blow up, but it looks like the verticals in option 2 are shaped and are, they're not regular, and would also be dynamic as the sun moves through, as it casts along the face of the south facade.
Yeah, this is simpler in its parts and pieces, meaning it's a flat piece of metal that's folded, and the real difference between these are the fold line varies. And so you get the apex of they're basically triangles in plan, and the apex of the triangle moves, and you can we never evolved to how many of those you would create, but actually you might only create 2 or 3, and then if you flip them, you'll get twice as many, and you could find patterns in that as well, or not, or you could try to be absolutely random, but we all know how hard random is. And what you said about 3, I actually is what I think about 1, which is that it becomes non-directional.
I agree.
Yeah. Too even. Yeah. I didn't feel that way about this, and I actually, one of the things I like about this, interested in your comment about making the building look bigger. One of the reasons I like this is because I think the staggered ganging of floors, first of all, is more different, and I actually thought it didn't make it look bigger.
I think I did sort of respond positively to option number 2. I think for me, part of that is just the way that it's rendered. The shadows, it's just giving a little bit more contrast and a little more color. And so I'm kind of willing to guess that that's just sort of a rendering issue, because I think the pattern that's established in number 3 in real life is going to have a little bit more of that variation that hopefully we're seeing in option number 2. It's just, I think it's just a render issue. Like it sort of pops a little bit more, and because it's rendered very brown overall, I think when the light is hitting and giving us a little white in that second option, I sort of jump for it. I like the way that this is breaking down the larger facade. Like it seems cool. It's really, I do like this one as well. I like it a little less on the bookend pieces. I feel like here it's breaking down this large facade. Yeah. When I move to this one, and this, the architects can tell me I'm wrong, but I feel like the massing itself is breaking down the building in a way that's interesting here. And when I apply that pattern to it, it feels a little busy to me.
So you're saying that you like, from the bookend side, you prefer option 3. Is that what you're saying, Andrew?
No, it's kind of the opposite. Like I don't prefer option 3 on the end. Like to me, like it's something that I feel like works really well on that long expansive building, but when it gets over to this side, it just feels like a lot. But I'm willing to be overruled.
No, but I would agree with your statement on perhaps the rendering, and perhaps the rendering is not doing justification to the design. I think that there's the subtleties between all of them is slight, and I think that there's a little fuzziness to it, and and I don't know whether that is perhaps creating that lack of commitment from us, and the idea that we can't, it's just not, it's not crisp enough or developed enough for the judgment call. But I mean, from the explanation, the only idea that I like option 3 is from the explanation and understanding really what it would do. So I'm not relying so much on the rendering. I'm relying on the idea that I understand what the manipulation of the triangles and the catching of the lights and the staggered. I can see that, and therefore I think I can imagine it better. But there is a slight discrepancy on the goldness, I want to say, of the renderings. There's this gold component that the renderings keep having. That I don't know about that, which was going to lead to my discussion on the next piece, which is the penthouse options, right? And I think my discussion on those things, and I think that again, I think that I can't fully understand the shift of the materiality in the penthouse, and I think that not understanding fully what the material is. I mean, I understand the diagram on the right, but I think that the rendering perhaps is not doing full justice as well to what the materiality of the penthouse is. I think that it's looking gold looking. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if it's my screen, but it has this gold component to it, which, you know, I know that David, you said that it was a bronze color. So I'm not understanding really the differences between all of them. I think that it's just a materiality difference. So maybe perhaps the presentation of the different materials, I think, would be better to understand what the penthouse is, rather than just relying so much on the renderings, because they're just, you flip through them, there's slight discrepancies that I can't really make up my mind on one of them or the other. I do like your open terrace though, that open space between the penthouse and, you know, whatever floor house. I do like, you know, this zipper open piece that just, you know, breaks the building and brings people out in this, like, you know, green space and balcony space.
Well, and I will say this, the rendering of metallic metal in you know, different facets, you know, deserves a more sophisticated. This is SketchUp rendering to be able to do multiples of different options.
Right.
And I would agree with whoever made the statement that I'm not sure it's doing it justice, but all good observations.
So talking about the tops, is option 3 the same metal panel? It is just that it's shingled?
Yes, it's the same
Okay.
finish,
Okay.
and it's the same metal panel, yes.
Yeah. Which I think makes, I like that solution. I'm not sure. You know, I think it could stand some development, but
But you see, when you look at that option, it looks very flat. It looks very flat, which is what it's not trying to be. I mean, there's
Right.
articulation. There's a great articulation that you're creating on the penthouse, as well as your preferred option for elevation. But I think that when you look at the rendering, it just looks flat, and that's what's not making justice to what you're trying to say. So I guess it gets hard for a selling point on it.
Yeah.
I understand.
I do think it's heading in the right direction, though, the option 3
Agreed.
top.
Agreed.
Yeah. I agree, Frank, about the open space on that level also.
Yeah.
I think that really makes a big difference.
And then we have the base options, right? So page 50 starts with the base southeast corner options that you presented. That I guess is again part of the vote.
Yeah, I think the preferred south, you know, I think that's pretty strong.
It is, but it goes with the material, the triangle component that you were not so fond about. So,
Well, I bet it could go with the other one.
So I would say that too, David, that I think that base option 3 works. I like the idea that it's not segmented to just the entrance as you're presenting an option 2, but that it goes throughout, so that it really creates more of an interesting base, and, you know, a higher reading of what this base is, which is elegant. So you are presenting an option. Yeah, man.
I want to make sure I've got, I realized I was just showing you
that one.
Yeah,
no, that's not right.
There you
Yeah.
go. Oops. You know,
yeah, and also I like that shape coming down to the ground, whether it's, you know, whether it's option 2 or option 3. I don't know how it works with option 2, facade option 2, but I do think, substantial columns coming through that register that 33-foot bay is, I think it's very good. And the double scale that it gives. These are the little more complex.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's separating the canopy rather than letting it run all around. The running all around creates a belt that ties the bundle together too much. It doesn't let the bundle, each individual strand of the bundle come to the ground.
Yeah. And so that's again to option, where is that? Yeah, canopy option 3. Yeah.
Yes.
Which I agree with also. And signage option, just get right to it. 3 makes the most sense also.
I found the right place.
Oh, you were really fast on that one. Okay.
Do we have anything that shows the facade along the civic space at all? Or even the floor plan?
So, well, I can definitely show you the floor plan, but that's well, I got the wrong option, but yes, that's along the civic space.
Okay. I guess that's one thing, and maybe it's more of a floor plan issue that does concern me. Is I'm happy that we have the entry to the building sort of fronting on the civic space. I think it's great. I think it activates that corner. I question whether or not the bike room running parallel with the civic space is the best use for that, and whether it can do the job of activating and helping activate that civic space. It seems very similar to the condition that we have at the public storage, where we have an active cafe along the corner at Middlesex, and then we have a public space that's not used very often farther into the civic space. And I think that as we get into the civic space as a whole, I think that those programs together haven't activated that park in the way that it probably should have. And I'm worried that we're mirroring it on this building here.
Mm-hmm. I guess my response is a couple things. I hear what you're saying. One, we're celebrating bikes, and we're quite frankly thinking about bikes as, trying to get back to the very beginning here. We're trying to think about bikes as art objects, full of color, and with the bike room full, and thinking about this wall, that far wall, as being a place as for art, for a mural that could be the whole wall. We've actually done this before in the bike room, not nowhere near this scale, but the idea that you could literally take that wall and celebrate it in, somehow in the spirit of
I think that it would be worthwhile seeing your design intent on that, David. I will point out to you your lab building in Kendall Square on Binney Street has a bike storefront at the bottom, and I go through that daily just because I'm doing a residential building across the street from that. And there's not one, I see 2 bikes in there, and it's like this great space. And obviously you spent a lot of time thinking about it because it has very elegant components and similar to what you're saying here. But at times I almost think that it's a missed opportunity, not so much for you, but a missed opportunity for the owner and the developer, because it's like this ground space that has glass and has this beautiful thing, and nobody's using it. And, I think that people are taking their bikes up to their lab space or, putting them somewhere else, because probably they're riding on $3,000 bikes. But I would agree with what Andrew's saying, that there is a lost opportunity potentially. And the idea of exploring the space, either perhaps A, can it move somewhere else so that it activates this a lot more? Or B, what is it that we wants to become so that it is activated even when there's 2 bikes in there, so that whether there's art or there's some type of a wall or something that really creates this thing that it communicates with the open space and the civic space outside, so it doesn't seem like it's a lost opportunity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying. I've had the same thought. Where are those bikes going? And I'm happy to show you how we might develop that. Actually, where we're doing it in another building, because very often the bikes go home at night, as you would expect.
Right.
We've actually convinced our client there that they're going to light that mural at night, not all night, but when the bikes disappear at 6 o'clock, the lights will stay on for a little while longer, and it'll be, part of the active edge of the building.
Wait, where is the mural? Is it on the face,
It would-
the exterior facade, or
No, it
back?
would be on the back
It's
wall.
It would
back
be on the
in the
back, it would be
back
on the
wall of
back
the
wall.
bikes. Yeah, that's what I
It would
thought.
be on the
Okay.
back wall. It would be on the back wall.
I can actually show you. We did a bunch of research. We're not the first ones to ever have this idea. And as we discovered, as we did a bunch of research, and some of them are good and some of them aren't as good. But as I say, we're doing one right now. The mural's not fully designed, but and the space is not as big. But I think it'll do what we want it to do. So I'm happy to share all that with you.
Yeah,
I think the
and
mural
as,
can be really-
just for the commission's knowledge, I have talked to the team about this as well, sort of the idea that it's supposed to be an active use. So it's not just a matter of being visually interesting. It's supposed to have that, coming and going of pedestrian interaction as well.
Yeah, I think the circulation doesn't really support that right now. We kind of have to like lurk in with your bike from the alleyway. Like there's not a direct connection out, and it makes it makes it harder to imagine that as being really celebrating bikes in that way, and it makes it harder to imagine how the tables and chairs that are currently being sort of lined along that, how those would really be activated and used, especially as you get towards the middle of that run.
Well, and remember, this is our connection to East Somerville. The underpass is right here. So we're imagining that some part of that biking population is coming here from the west and will come into the building that way. That it becomes another portal into the building. I don't think, non-bikers are going to use it, but.
Okay. And then I guess one other question, as long as we have the plan here. So there are 2 retail spaces up in the top corner, is that correct? Or is that imagined as one that could be split?
Yeah, it definitely could be one that's split, and it could be demised differently than we're showing it.
Okay. I think just as it moves along, providing a little bit more dedicated open space for the one at the top seems like it would be advantageous, especially in relation to that corner. We have one it seems like dedicated for the one that's a little bit lower down.
Yep.
And then my understanding is on the streetscape, that's something that's developed as part of the Middlesex Avenue in like the process that's going on for assembly. Is that correct?
That's right. Hi, Andrew. How are you? Yes, so we imagine, but we don't know. We'll be working with Sarah and her team to really understand. So that I think we all have a vested interest to make sure that Middlesex is a cohesive language, and we're excited that it will be. Too often we make these kind of cycle tracks and it goes to nowhere. So, as we continue with design development, we'll be checking in with the city and then coordinating whatever streetscape language that flanks this with ours.
I guess that was my only question that I had, Mikian, on your presentation. You did say in the spirit of, you used that word, and my question was, and I guess back to you, Sarah, when we're saying in the spirit of, does that mean that it is being designed that way, or it's in spirit? Like potentially we would like this to look like this eventually, but we don't know, or is it going to look like this initially? So I guess I'm just confused about that.
Obviously the devil is in the details. There will be, I am working with the mobility team and with the team doing the neighborhood planning, the neighborhood master plan update, to determine what that cross section will look like. And I'm hoping that we'll have definitive answers on that very, very shortly. But
So
it
might not be necessarily what McKeon's presenting.
it'll be probably pretty darn close.
In the spirit.
In the
Yes,
spirit.
in the spirit.
Okay, I shouldn't have said that. I should have framed it that this is how we are proposing the design, but that we are flexible and looking forward to coordinating the design of this with Sarah and her team.
Yes.
In the spirit.
I will tell-
And when you kept saying it, I was like, that sounds very vague. I shouldn't have said that. So, we are hoping, this happens all the time, right? That the city is developing their own master plan. We are interested in making sure that Middlesex Avenue is a coordinated effort and that not every block is a different language, for sure.
I will share with you a bumper sticker that I saw in the city of Somerville, and I took a photograph, and it said basically, which is why I asked the question, Somerville, where great enthusiasm meets great enthusiasm meets incompetence.
Oh no!
And it's this idea that there's always great visions, right? But there's always the challenge in how that vision becomes true, you know.
Right.
And it always becomes this intersection of things, and I want to make sure that, you know, this great enthusiasm that the section has does not die in, you know, away because of, you know, different reasons or other, and then we're left without it. But, you know, we tend to see that a lot of times in which,
Well,
you know, great ideas just
I'm very
go the wrong way.
hopeful about this
Yeah.
because I think that there are a number of developments along Middlesex Avenue. We aren't kind of in this island creating our own element. And so I think Sarah will be our bridge to these other developments. And, we are hoping that it'll be a tweak, but this is a full commitment to a cycle track, sidewalk with green buffers. Those are all things that we've heard are important for the city. And so no matter what, those ingredients will be there. And we just want to make sure that there's a consistency. So when you drive or bike down Middlesex Avenue, you feel like it's one experience. And that we believe that we're aligned with the city on that commitment.
I'm very excited about that. I think that is absolutely necessary. I think the section as proposed looks good. I'm really excited to see a cycle track. That's something that should be mandatory, I feel like, in Assembly at this point, and it's not. The one piece that gives me a little bit of pause is the green buffer between the cycle track and the street, just in terms of the amount of salt that happens on these roads. Knowing it sort of firsthand, I think most of the planting that's adjacent to the street directly on Assembly has probably been replaced 3 times over the course of the past 6 or 7 years. So as much as I want to like that, and I understand understand why it's there, the ability to maintain that in the long term is really suspect.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. It's a good point.
And the green roof of the building is not habitable, right?
It's not habitable.
Okay.
So it will have planting trays. So it'll be a very sustainable green roof. And I believe it has like 10 inches of soil depth. So it'll have some very happy plants up there.
There was, I can't remember which of the two of you talked about the integration of the landscape and the building design. And I wish, I'd like to hear a little more about that.
You know, I think it might help for us to present the civic design.
I can wait for that.
Because I think that's really that diagonal line. But I'll make sure, please remind me if I forget to mention it when we go through that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
In the meantime, do we want to vote on some of the options? Do we want to,
Yes.
before we move on?
Yes.
So there's a lot to vote on here, I think.
There is definitely a lot to vote on. So I think I've been trying to take notes as we've gone along, and I'm hoping that Andrew Graminsky in the background can help steer me on this. So I think what I have generally heard is for the massing option, everybody prefers massing option 3. For the facade option, there was some discussion, and so I need some clarification on that, but I think we can vote on the massing option, the base option, and the canopy and signage options.
Yep.
Are all option number 3. The other piece that I heard discussion about was the base option, and I think that's because it's tied to the facade option specifically, but there were pieces of that base option that you were leaning towards, as in the idea that number 3 comes all the way down to the ground with the split canopy.
Yeah.
So,
And David, can that be done with either facade option 3 or facade option 2?
Yes.
A concept? Yeah, so I think we're safe to vote on that also, maybe.
okay, just as a clarification, is there something that you would like to see that sort of shows the, are we asking for more information, or are we voting on a facade option this evening?
I don't think we're voting on the facade option this evening.
Okay. All right, so then can I have a motion to approve massing option number 3, base option number 3, as it will coordinate with the facade option, and canopy option number 3, and signage option number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Deborah, seconded by Frank. Roll call vote. Deborah?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
All right, so the motion carries for those pieces. So as we talk about the other pieces that we need to discuss are, how would you like to move forward with the facade option and then the penthouse option? Those were 2 pieces that were not decided at this point.
I mean, I think that we gave enough, I believe, enough information to David on, you know, our understanding of the materiality, the renderings. I think that I would like to see that back, at least those components of the building, not the entire thing, just to see those. But I would like to see them back.
Mm-hmm.
The penthouse, the facade option, and including all the based option in which we talked about the bike parking and some of those components.
As well as, I think, the top. Did you say that, Frank?
The penthouse option, yes.
Did you say that? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. The Then why don't we pause on making the overall
Oh, we lost
guidelines, and if anything else is would like to be modified, and until our next meeting, when we look at the details.
Yep, agreed.
Okay.
Young, I think you can take control. I think.
You're on mute, Rick Young.
I'm on mute.
No,
No,
you're fine.
Oh,
I'm here.
now.
Great, you just gave me it. Okay, thank you. Excellent.
There
Can
you
you
go.
see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So thanks
Elaborate.
very much. We're happy to be here. I have Emmett from my office here, who will also kind of help to answer any kind of detailed questions that we have, but I'm going to run through this. And I believe Jen from Atelier 10 is here as well. So let's see. We'll be going through, forgive me, I'm going to make some redundancy. So we'll go through the team and introductions again, and then quickly go into the design so that you can see where we are. So this is our team. You've seen David present this. And we've been working closely with Courtney and Sarah, just understanding the neighborhood, understanding the approved master plan, and really looking at, you know, a kind of 5-minute walk radius around the site to understand how this neighborhood park could complement all of the other green amenities in the neighborhood. And so I won't go through this. You probably know this like the back of your hand, but I'm happy to come back to this. And so you've seen this, but really the foundation of our work is to try to create an inclusive and multi-generational neighborhood park. As I said before, that complements the great kind of civic spaces that flank it on the other side of 93, and as well as to the south of Middlesex. So essentially what I'll be talking about today, you see these like different colored lines, and this is really for kind of just to outline the different property lines, but really what we're trying to do is make this feel like a cohesive place while we're trying to make Kensington Park really feel like a neighborhood destination. So that's really our goal. And this is, you know, flanked on Middlesex Avenue on one side and I-93 on the other. This is the park that Andrew mentioned earlier with next to the storage facility. It has outdoor seating adjacent to retail. So we'll be showing that in our designs. I'm not going to read, the first couple of slides are text heavy and I'm not going to read through them. We'll send a copy of this so you can review, but really it's about connectivity. It's about creating effective green buffers because we are constrained by the highway and then Middlesex Avenue on the other side, making sure that we're creating accessible and inclusive landscape and understanding how we can make sure that this is a flexible and programmed park. Just to share a little bit of process, the left plan is the concept design. When we first started working, not only through a series of community engagement meetings with the community in Somerville, but also working closely with Louisa, Courtney, and Sarah, and the staff at PSUF to understand how we can start to integrate not only the requirements of the master plan, but really to create a kind of green neighborhood park. And so you can see the difference between concept and schematic as we looked at increasing the lawn area. We had this green nook seating area, and So this kind of green buffer along Middlesex is that that connector, and we are continuing to work with David's team to make sure that this feels like a connective condition. The real change from concept to schematic is, really making sure that this thoroughfare for emergency vehicles remains open. So you see that it creates a hierarchy of a civic plaza along, so it doubles as a civic plaza. And then secondly, kind of increasing the green area. You'll see, as in our design development plans, that this changes again and evolves as we have worked closely with PSUF. We had looked at trying to create porosity by adding one more access point through the lawn, which with guidance of the community and with Courtney and Louisa and Sarah, kind of bisecting that lawn felt like something problematic. In this, we started to introduce a small water feature that was more of a sound feature within the planter itself. And I think there was a continued concern about the kind of closed nature of this, and that it felt more like a office kind of nook seating area, so that we were asked to kind of, I think Louisa challenged us with how do you create, it's a relatively small space, a park where the neighborhood really would want to come here. Their kids would really want to come here. And so we really took that challenge seriously. And this is just an early perspective showing that garden nook area aligned to the new location, the front door, from the previous master plan, where the front door was kind of located over here. I don't know if Jen is on this call.
I'm on the call, yes. Are you
great.
able to?
So maybe we can, Jen is from Atelier 10, and we've been working closely with her. We are really interested in using vegetative strategies to understand pollution mitigation. So I'm gonna pass this over to Jen.
Thanks, McYoung. Hi all, I'm Jen. I work with Atelier 10 and I'm managing the sustainability consulting for this project. So that's both lead for the project indoors, health and well-being, as well as looking at the outdoor environment and what the air quality is. So as we're all aware, based on our site location, we do have close proximity to a highway. We've kind of done some in-depth research and have been collaborating closely with the design team to figure out how we can incorporate strategies that can help make this a safe space for occupants to use. We started by looking at the EPA data for both Middlesex County and for Somerville to understand kind of what this looks like on a macro level. Overall, most of the year has good quality, with some of the days being moderate and unhealthy. If you can go to the next slide, please, McYoung. But as we're aware, that data that we have looked at is a composite of different points around the city, some of which are close to highways, but by having proximity to the highway, there will be transportation-related air pollutants, or abbreviated as TRAP. So we are focused on how the concentration of pollutants will impact our site and how we can improve that air quality through different green infrastructure to mitigate the pollution. Next slide, please. So we've been looking at several different design strategies which we can incorporate into the civic space and the landscape in order to reduce the pollution concentration that makes it to our site. Some of these are kind of already working in our benefit, such as the urban form and surface roughness in figure 1. Just by having a diversity of shapes and buildings, this is able to mix the air and not have these stagnant areas of pollution where you might have with all the same sized buildings, such as in a residential area. And we're also working to incorporate vegetated buffers and canopies within our project that will help protect the occupants which are using this outdoor space, as well as increase the distance from the source of the pollution to the occupant itself by having the surface area of that vegetated buffer. Next slide, please. So this is text heavy, but again, we'll share this afterwards. These are just some of the key takeaways that we've worked on and have incorporated into the design, and what some of those emissions in particular might be. We're most concerned with particulate emissions, PM10 and PM2.5 being closer to the highway. But we are hopeful that some of this will start to decrease as more and more electric cars come onto the market. But in the meantime, we're working on adding vegetation barriers, which are at least 20 feet or more in terms of thickness, and making sure we're selecting appropriate vegetation, which is able to mitigate this pollution throughout the year, and also won't cause issues in terms of pollen or VOCs with a regrettable substitution. Next slide.
So kind of working closely with Jen and her team, early on, we kind of developed the design of this. So this is a cross section through the site. It's kind of right here in the middle. So it shows I-93 on one side, where our site begins here. And so there's a real nice distance between I-93 and our site. And we're looking at utilizing combined strategies to create a green buffer along this corridor, which is to use landform that's low enough that it doesn't create any kind of safety issues, a variety and diversity of evergreen and deciduous trees, as well as a diversity of different heights of plantings to really create a kind of protective condition. You can see that there's this green buffer, as well as some trees that are located within the kind of central green, as well as a buffer along Middlesex Avenue. You can see when we go through the process, this actually buffer has gotten wider as we've worked with Jen on this. And so this is a direct correlation to the models that she created, where because we've created these canopy structures and the vegetative canopy structures, we believe that we've created a kind of safer zone. Obviously, the pollution, mitigating the pollution from I-93 is a more serious and issue for us than from Middlesex Avenue, just because the volume of pollution from one versus the other is more extreme. So we've created a series of buffers based on that kind of research. And so I just wanted to go through where we are now and what we're presenting today. This is also text heavy. It's part of the requirement of this submission, but just wanted to kind of highlight, really, we're trying to create a neighborhood park to make it healthy, to create a place where people really want to come, and to make it accessible for everybody, for all patrons and for all generations. We are fully committed to a native planted garden with pollinator gardens. And as we develop the design further, we'll be working with Sarah and Courtney and Louisa to kind of really make sure that our planting palette complies and brings kind of joy and wonder to this park. Again, very text heavy, but just to kind of give you a sense of over the last year, we've been working with the community and with PSUF very closely, and it's been a really fruitful process for us. I think the project has really gotten richer and more layered, and helped us to understand how we can create a more welcoming park for everybody, not just for the tenants of this new building. So again, I won't go through this. And this is some of the responses that our design addresses to those comments, really to understand how we can make sure that our buffers are safe and create protection from pollution, but also creating porosity and connectivity. Making sure, so there are some elements that we had in the design throughout the process. We're not showing you every iteration that we've removed or added as we've gotten this valuable feedback.
Yeah, Mick Young, I think that's a good point of kind of all the process that we've gone through to get to this point and merge some of the different feedback from different constituents to create a space that fits all those needs. I know Anthony's on the line. I know he wanted to comment on that as well a bit. I don't know if you have audio, Anthony, or not, or we can move through and let him pick up later. I guess we don't have.
You know, that's a great point. I'd say the process and the feedback we got, just that's one good thing about the remote work, is that there are many different ways in which people could reach us, and we would get images. And I know, Ryan, your team was involved in this and got excited by some of Louisa's comments. And so I think it's been a really fruitful process for us. This is where we are today. And so you can see there's some constraints about the site that have remained the same. One of them is this kind of through block emergency vehicle access. This kind of paved area is a requirement. The seating that you see along here is movable and can be, so one of the changes you can see from the evolution of the design is, I think, Sarah, this was something that you had mentioned, which we thought was a great point, is to make sure that the kind of porosity through this tree grove planter kind of worked with the building. So we kind of, we looked at this more closely, and it kind of aligns with the center of each of these colonnades, and creates a green. So overhead, there's the building canopy structure, which has the green roof on it, and then you're flanked on the other side with this grove of trees. You can see here that there's this kind of along Middlesex Avenue, this planter, which aligns with the interior lobby as you move in and out. And again, the tree grove kind of moves in, and this is actually evolving the exact location of the trees as we're working with Elkus Manfredi. Within the neighborhood park, one of the changes was, as I mentioned earlier, this pathway that we had integrated that kind of aligns with this this access point. Felt like it bisected the lawn too much, and we wanted to create a kind of more generous space, flexible play space and sunning space with flexible, maybe Adirondack chairs that sit underneath it. So there's a row of trees that you can see. This is our property line. And so this is the property line of the Civic Park. And so we have staggered this row of trees with a kind of ringed seating along that tree that doubles as a tree grate as well. We widen the mouth of this entry at the crosswalk as it crosses Middlesex Avenue to create a more generous entry point, and are proposing these kind of art lighting elements. We do a lot of these kind of sculptural lighting pieces, and so really to kind of create a welcoming entry point. And one of the larger changes that we made as this evolved was to create what we're calling an urban beach. It's a fountain that's located here, and you can see that the bench around it sort of steps down towards this shared bike pedestrian pathway. We widened this buffer zone when we actually transformed this planter into a kind of a water feature. It's a fountain, so that this becomes a place. I know Somerville quite well. I used to live there, and my sister-in-law and her family live there now. So I've been to many of the parks in Somerville, and I think this could be a very unique feature with kind of natural sculptural stepping stones within them. And then the seating nook, the other half of the seating nook is located on this side. So if I were to just take the trees off so you can see the kind of diversity of seating some of it is within the planter, and it's kind of more 2 and 3 seatings. Some of it is kind of adjacent to the water feature. So you could sit both on one side, which is paved, or dangle your feet into the water feature, which is a very shallow pool of water. So in the winter, it becomes basically a paved surface. And I think this was something that came from Louisa, which we loved, this idea of a chalk play area. So to pave this in a way that this could be a play zone, we've added 2 planters here, which have trees planted in them. And you can see there's seating all along the sidewalk along Middlesex as well. But we imagine in this area that this could be kind of a family gathering space where parents could sit here, have lunch, and watch their child kind of play in the lawn and along the chalk walk. And so these are just some precedent images showing you kind of number 6 is where the stones might be located, the notion of a chalk walk, different kinds of seating with a kind of lawn area, the kind of ring seating around the these trees that flank this shared connector pathway. And then just on number 8, you can see this child kind of walking through. So we imagine that it'd be a very shallow sheet of water that you can actually walk across with shoes on. The other thing that the fountain will provide is we're actually designing a mist feature right in the middle. It will be very low. We've done this many times so that the mist doesn't creep into the road. But I think it would be nice to have as a feature because it will really cool this environment and create an amenity during the summer. So you can see here, this is the Crown Fountain. And if you've been there, you can see how shallow the water is. And then when I was talking about this bench, this idea that you could sit along this wooden bench and actually dangle your feet in the water on the other side. So it's a kind of multifaceted engagement. So this is a perspective view showing the kind of sloped condition of this paved surface as it goes towards the bench with the lawn in the back. And you can see the mound, which is a protective condition, and then the buffer, the green buffer on the right. So these are just some site programming diagrams showing how these different plaza spaces could function throughout the day with a flex green space, the urban connector, a more active play zone kind of protected between these 2 buffer zones. And then we had long discussions about, how does this site get used? And so it really helped us shape the design, like on the weekends and at night. I think there was a lot of concern with PSUF about, is this going to become dead at night or during the weekends? And so we wanted to kind of do a study to show, you could have weekend markets once a month and how this could become a multi-generation play space. And we even scaled out, I don't have this drawing here, but how you could put a temporary stage and have very small scale performances on this. So what I think is important about this diagram is that you can both have kind of active functions of programming along this main thoroughfare while you have this kind of more family-centered space here. And then this could actually be a quieter zone where you could sit and read a book. And so even within this small park, I think it could have multiple functions. The other thing we've added is a second access point from the Kensington Underpass, the Kensington Connector, to really make this a pedestrian way. And so you can see that in this diagram that these 2 access points are the main thoroughfares through the park, and that there would be these kind of secondary access points with this kind of green connector through the building.
Mick Young?
Yes.
Oh, good. Can you hear me just real quickly? Sorry, I'm on 3.
No worries. Go ahead, Anthony.
I've broken the Guinness Book of World Records. I'm on 3 different devices, and each is providing a different technology. So it's one of those COVID nights. I did just want to compliment staff, Mick Young and her team, for really working to meld a bunch of different sort of philosophies and comments that we've heard throughout the public process there was a major response early to more plantings and greening. Obviously, you folks are very familiar with the Mystic Task Force feelings about highway development. And Mick Young got a great response from the Mystic Task Force and Alderman McLaughlin. And staff really infused concepts that would allow the community to enjoy the site. Obviously, there's residential within Assembly and also on the other side. And there was a real passion around making sure that this was also a community resource. So I think Mick Young has done a great job of trying to meld those two concepts. We did get this out. We updated with the water feature, which everyone is pretty pumped about, and we were able to update the task force on that. And there was a great response. So I think it's been a really good balance, and we have gotten on both the building and the civic space a great response from the task force and Alderman McLaughlin, and thank the Design Review Commission for this, for your patience in listening to this very long presentation and your leadership on Assembly Square. And sorry for the technical difficulties.
That's great, Anthony. Yeah, I think this is the one piece that I think we're still working out with PSUF and Louisa. And so we'd love to hear your feedback on this. You know, how do we create a safe zone without creating a kind of major, in order for us to comply with both the master plan, the green scorecard, you know, we have a 12-foot wide path here, and we're trying to make this a shared space. In the underpass, that's also a shared, there isn't a dedicated bike circulation space. So we have a solution where we're going to do a paved kind of marking to show where bikes might move through, but we are also looking at options of signage to really slow people down and make this really a neighborhood park, not just a thoroughfare where bikes just tear through. And so this is just, that was just a diagram in process. And the next few slides are really technical. I'm going to go through them very quickly. We will be submitting this so that you can see them. You can see that we're in compliance in our design with all of the different elements, including drinking fountain, all of the furnishings. And this diagram kind of shows all of those elements. These are based on the Somerville zoning ordinance guidelines. So basically what you see in red are the ways in which our team has responded to the neighborhood park ordinances and the through block plaza ordinances. Again, it's pretty detailed, so don't expect for you to read through all that right now, but happy to answer any questions about that after. And then just to close this out, because I know you guys must be very tired, just to show you some of the precedent images that we're thinking about, you know, the open lawn being a kind of family-centered space, having kind of the ringed seating, and then all of our paving, except for in the fountain, is pervious, and all of our planting is native and low VOC planting. But to create, like, along the buffer zone, to create kind of these perennial plantings with a diversity of evergreen and deciduous trees. And then to think about a very thin sheet of water that might actually have some kind of design within it. So it's almost like a beach, and also provides safety for kids when they're running around in it. And then just a hint of some of the tree planting strategies that we're thinking of, and these diverse mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. These are all trees that are we've been working closely with, again, with the Somerville team to understand how we can make sure that everything is low VOC and as well as native. And then again, with the understory planting. This isn't the only planting we're providing. We've just started design development. So as we move through this, we're happy to share that information with everybody. And then just night lighting. we'll be using the city standards along the street light, but really we have a commitment to dark sky. So all of our lighting selection will be towards that commitment. And to create, our lighting consultant we've been working closely with them, but to create a layered strategy for lighting. So some of the benches will have under bench lighting, we'll have some tree up lighting, and then some area lights, as well as our canopy feature will be lit. And just to show you some beginnings of the selection of different furnishings, we will have big belly compacting, recycling, and litter receptacles. And if you refer back to the compliance plan, you'll see where those are located, as well as drinking fountains. We're thinking that we could also include a little fountain for pets. And then thinking about signage at the gateways to make sure that they are welcoming. One thing we started thinking about is maybe there's a kind of signage on the floor, on the flooring, on the paving, as well as vertical signage throughout the project. And so that's in a nutshell our plan that we're presenting today, and welcome any questions or comments that you might have.
Yes, commissioners, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And also, since this is your third civic space that you're officially reviewing in a more detailed capacity, just making sure that the piece that you would be voting on is specific to the guidelines of the through block plaza. And then commenting, giving guidance on the project as a whole and the offsite improvements in the Kensington Park area.
That's right. Thanks, Courtney. I think one thing I want to point out that I didn't mention is that the existing plaza is located right here. I'm trying to see your faces while I show this plan, and I think I'm technically having trouble doing that, but I will leave this plan up, and I'm happy to go back to any other plans. Maybe I should just go full screen so you can see it more carefully.
I think just a quick question, just for clarification. Is the Kensington Park, is this a POPs, or is this become a city-owned park in the long term?
So the property, the Kensington Park, that's within the boundaries of the property line, and the through block plaza will be city property. And the master plan decision determined that the applicant will be designing, building, and maintaining the civic spaces.
In perpetuity.
Yes.
And then question number 2 was, I'm really happy to see the information about the particulate matter and the layers of planting. One does look like it's on the Mass DOT property. Is that aspirational, or is that actual and coordinated?
It's aspirational. We're hoping that we can influence the planting of this to say, after working with Atelier 10, this seems like an important piece of the kind of pollution mitigation, but it is aspirational. It's not part of our scope, but we thought we would try.
In spirit.
In spirit, in spirit, I like that.
Does seem very important. I mean, I can jump in with lots of thoughts. I'll probably drone on for a long time. I don't know if anybody wants to, Deborah or Frank wants to go before me, or just go for it.
Go for it, Andrew.
Oh goodness, here we do. I'm really excited to see this level of investiture in this parcel in particular. I think it's incredibly important as a connection between East Somerville and Assembly. It is the park that is currently there. I've always referred to as just the park of sadness, because it is just the biggest nothing burger on the face of the earth. And And probably the saddest part is that it's not very old. So that's why I really look at that park, and you know, I'm going to question a lot of some of these things based on the experience of watching that park deteriorate over the course of really only 7 or 8 years is how old that park is, and it looks terrible. So I guess comment number 1 is just from my experience and so the larger pedestrian and bike network.
You mean this one?
Yeah, the connection between the Kensington Connector and Foley Street is it seems far and away the dominant pedestrian trajectory. Probably, I mean, 100% right now, and I would argue even after this park is improved. And so the piece that sort of jumps out is right now that in this plan it does feel a little bit secondary. It feels smaller than the through block connector on Kensington. And it feels like some of the program pieces that are engaging, that are coming from this site, feel a little blocked off. Like I'm looking at this sort of series of circular planters adjacent to the lawn, and the way that they're coordinated with the lights right now, it feels like it's a barrier to the lawn. I really like the chalk walk. I like the fountain. I like all of those things, but they're all engaging at a 90-degree angle with this really, you know, this incredibly important connection that needs to get back to East Somerville. And I think that's comment 1. I like that we've opened it up when we get to the crosswalk. I think that's a really important move. But it sort of jumps out as it, especially within looking at it against where we see the civic space, it looks secondary. And I just want to call out that it is the more important of the two by a factor of 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's about 12 and a half feet wide here, and then it grows to like almost 19 feet wide here. You can see in the previous iteration, we did actually have a path that cut through here, and we can always bring that back. I think there was a feeling with everyone, the community, everyone, that they wanted as much green space. We're also challenged with the new fountain in meeting the requirements of the green master plan requirements. So when we put this path in, it also made it more challenging. But I think you know, it's this question about is there a way in which we could create a more gracious opening on this side as we did on this side, rather than creating a kind of 20-foot passageway here. But we can take a look at that and see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my concern. Is right now I'm concerned, I guess, that the experience of walking through that path is still largely defined by the adjacent storage center plaza, which I think we all know is not a thing of great beauty. So I want to make sure that when your project engages it on that side, that it is engaging it in a way that's welcoming, that pulls me into that lawn, that pulls me into that chocolate, that makes me feel like I'm being invited in from that trajectory, even if I'm not intending to cross through to the through block plaza, which right now it feels like all of those pieces are linearly aligned to just be a connector between those two things, and I want to be welcomed.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
I think question number 2 is, it's more about the through block plaza. So we have essentially 2 versions of it. We have the on-site version and we have the Kensington Avenue right-of-way. And it feels like we have 2 linear paving spaces that are running parallel to each other, and I'm not completely clear on why that is and what the difference in purposes between those 2 spaces are.
If I could help a little bit with that from a zoning perspective. So the through block plaza does go from the edge of the southern edge of what is now the Kensington right-of-way all the way north to the buildings, to basically the building face. So that was is intended to be one uniform space. The because of the ownership of the different pieces is where it gets a little bit complicated. So you can see the building where it's labeled civic space through Block Plaza on site, where the picnic tables are. That is privately owned. The other piece is the Kensington Avenue right-of-way, but that should read as one space. Then when that is also combined with the current Kensington Park, then it reads as the idea is that it will be a neighborhood park. So we have to permit the off-site improvements separate from the through Block Plaza. But the intent is that it will read as a larger uniformed, or I shouldn't say uniform, a cohesive space in the long run. The difficulty that we do have is, as Mick Young had explained, we have to maintain emergency access through what was the Kensington, or will remain the Kensington right-of-way. But I believe that only needs to be 20 feet wide.
This is 20 feet wide. That's how small this park is. This is 20 feet wide.
Yeah. I guess my concern then is it feels like the portion of the civic space which exists on site, it feels like it is a different space. It does not feel like it's cohesive with the Kensington. Like the paving pattern immediately changes the moment that we hit that line. We've lined the trees along that line in a way that it feels, even though we're calling it a grove, it kind of feels more like a green wall. And it feels like we're trying to privatize that space that's closest to the building. I understand that it is private, but it doesn't read as one space to me.
So one of the constraints of the site is that we can't plant any trees. There's a lot of stuff going on underground here. And then if you recall, there's that deep canopy from the building. So this is almost like a space that's aligned with the building. And we are working closely with Elkus Manfredi so that the paving that's evolving in the lobby will actually come out into this space. So in some ways, Andrew, I think you're right that this space is actually part of the building. It's part of that language. And this space, which we've labeled as emergency vehicle access, we hope that nobody ever understands it like this, that this is a plaza that is aligned with this, neighborhood park. And so there is a kind of differentiation intentionally for these two spaces that although the programming of these spaces might at times be very similar.
It would be helpful to sort of see that canopy. I can't register it.
Yeah, let me see. I don't know. It used to be on here as a dotted line. So let me see if any one of these plans. But it pretty much here it is. See this dotted line here?
Okay.
Would Commissioner Arbaugh, is this something that you would be interested in seeing parts of the building presentation in relation to?
No, I mean, I can see the dashed line now.
You can see the dashed line, and so this is why we've pulled the planter and the trees a little bit away so that there is some egress and that there's room for the tree to grow so it doesn't jam up against that canopy structure.
I mean, I can accept that. I still feel like there's an opportunity to make that space feel more cohesive. It feels really walled off. And I like that it's going to attach into the building and it's going to relate to the paving. I think that's strong and that's great, but it is a significant chunk of the overall park and it feels private.
We are trying to comply also with all of I mean, we really like it, the green score requirements. And so if we take away like one of these planters, then we're no longer in compliance and we'd have to come back and ask for a variance or something, like some relief from that requirement. But
I'm sorry to clarify, the green patches on the ground are not part of the green score tallying of the private building.
Okay.
I think that the Civic Plaza is also, it's also larger than 20 feet currently as well. So you could earn back a little bit by narrowing that, which might make the Kensington connector at the bottom feel a little bit more primary, I think, overall.
We'll check that. I thought I triple checked this to make sure we made this as narrow as possible, but I'll definitely check that to see. Yeah.
I love the fountain. I think that's a really cool idea. One thing I think just to note is that I think you guys are basically on top of or very close to the historic Middlesex Canal. And it does sort of seem like there's an opportunity in that you're proposing a linear water feature on top of a historic linear water feature. There seems like there could be an opportunity for connection there.
Okay.
I think the trellis is really cool. I selfishly wish that it could shift over and engage with the Kensington connector path and be the kind of welcoming moment to the lawn on the other end. That's in my heart of hearts. I would love that.
Wait, what do you mean that it would go to the right or that it would go into the lawn?
So right now the trellis is engaging the Civic Plaza, and I wish that the trellis would almost take the spot where those three circles are, on the lawn, and engage that Kensington Connector Plaza, which I again sort of think is just sort of a more primary civic space than the Civic Plaza. I understand the need for the Civic Plaza, and I think that I get that overall. I do have a hard time sort of understanding a little bit how it's going to be used beyond. It's a little bit hard. I kind of look and I see the farmers market use, and I like that. That's cool. But I also, there's probably half a dozen places in assembly and assembly where you can imagine that happening probably first. So I'm a little hesitant on that one as well.
Yeah, I think we placed it here just because it is something that I think works not only as a trellis structure, but as a kind of an outdoor meeting area. And so we're hoping that it would be the place where the community and the tenants of the building might come together. We are always thinking about, we do a lot of healing gardens, and we're thinking about, in the future, how do we design these spaces in a kind of post-COVID, if there's like another wave. And so we imagine that we want to place this centrally rather than on the periphery, because we want like this to be a kind of central feature for everyone to use. But we can take a look at that and see. I'm hesitant to move it over here. I feel like I totally understand what you're saying, that this is an important thoroughfare. And I think it would change the use of that canopy structure from something where you're protected by green all around you, and it's a kind of a gathering, a place, rather than a place where you would kind of move through. And but we could look at kind of placing, your comments bring up something I think are interesting, like some kind of trellis structure as a gateway and entry point at this moment, rather than kind of moving this guy over here. But
and to build on that a little bit, I'm looking at the space between the public storage unit and your building as one park that includes the storage facility plaza. So I don't see that as a periphery, and I'm hoping that you guys don't either. I see that as still really in the heart of this experience that's going to extend between those two buildings that does unfortunately include the sort of, what's at the storage facility plaza, which is not great.
Did I just lose? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think the last thing too is just, well, I guess two more things, and then I'll shut up and let somebody else talk. I think the city is doing a lot of work right now on the Kensington underpass, which is including putting up sort of murals and a lot of cool stuff and painting a sort of gateway element this weekend. One thing that sort of jumps out is the amount of color that went in underneath there and how welcome it is, considering we're right next to the highway and it's a little bleh. So I would definitely encourage, I think the trellis, I think or maybe like there's so many places where I think that color could be included in this. And I know you can run with that like 1,000 times. So just.
Well, that's so great because we were just looking at the trellis last weekend and looking at maybe some of the surfaces might be colored resin. So I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when I looked at the precedent images, they tended to be a little more muted. And I would encourage like a shock of color would not be inappropriate for this location.
Okay. I mean, the other thing we were thinking is that maybe this pathway is an art opportunity, and we're not sure exactly what that means, but that on the ground plane, maybe there could be some color on there as well. But we'll take a look at that. I love the idea of adding more color.
Yeah, yes, please do that. And then the last thing, which is, it's probably more of a comment from the city, but the current connection between the Kensington that exists, it's off this property line, but there is a desire line that is at a certain point, it's like a desire highway that basically short circuits the entries that we're seeing proposed. And I would hope that there's some opportunity to deal with that now, because currently 90% of the people who are entering and crossing this are just walking through a dirt path through the handicap parking space. And I would hate to see this level of investiture go back into this park and leave that kind of original sin in terms of the desire lines that's getting through here.
Great.
And I'll be quiet.
Thanks very much. I think these are great comments. We'll, as you know, we're just at the beginning of design development, so we'll continue to think about all these things and integrate them next time we come back.
Andrew, could you just highlight, it sounds like you're in there all the time. Why is that desire line there, and how do we deal with that?
Sorry. So basically, as you walk through the Kensington, you come out and you have essentially your path as you're proposing it. The top one, yeah, that one goes like that. There is a version of that, but then there is I mean, if we were to go there, it's probably 10, 15 feet wide, just pounded dirt, and it crosses just south of where your new proposed path is. And people just, they don't do that. So it's more of a city issue. But it should and needs to be coordinated, especially because it doesn't get cleared in the winter and it becomes a slushy mess.
Okay, thank you.
Good to know.
That's it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Those are great comments. Those are very helpful, Andrew, your comments. I guess I only have a few comments to add on to that. One is I have a feeling this is a much smaller place than, when I look at your renderings and I see humans in it. The facade of the building is, seems very present in it, and I wouldn't have imagined that just looking at the plan. I was thinking the next time you present this, maybe I missed it, but I think it would be really helpful to see a section through the building and through to the storage building maybe. There's some really wonderful things that you're doing, very important things that you're doing with pollution mitigation and landform and all that. And I'm curious what happens when you cut the section the other way.
You mean this way? Okay, yeah, we can definitely look at that.
Yeah, from the lab building to the storage building, basically.
Maybe I think we can definitely do that.
Yeah, and then then we would see the canopies, imagine people occupying them, get a better sense of the width of um, the block cut through, whatever that's called. I lost.
This one, this Kensington
Yeah.
Row. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It does seem wide to me, but again, the whole thing, whole
Yeah.
park's
I mean,
smaller than I expected. But I
I
think
would
to see
love
it
to
in,
narrow it if I could,
yeah,
but
if you could.
we just we have to let emergency vehicles come through here. So, but
I
I'll
hear
check
you.
it once more because I just want to make sure that we have minimized that. If it's any wider, it will definitely get narrower.
Yeah. And yeah, so to see that, and yeah, and then have a better understanding of the structures and how they help support creating spaces within spaces and how, and or the connectivity across that way, even though there isn't a lot of movement in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So so those are my comments. I think the elements you have in here are really are quite wonderful. And again, I guess I'd also like to see more development of a relationship between the lobby and outside. I can't tell if there's a suggestion of green walls, with the green lines in the lobby, drawn in the lobby. I don't know what those are.
I think that's my apologies. I think that's part of an old rendering. So
Okay, I got it.
close your right eye. That's my bad.
Yeah, see,
Sorry,
I
David.
mean, I did catch the paving going inside, and but I would like to understand that relationship. And I think as the architecture team looks at the bike storage, there may be some development beyond what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
So, yeah. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
I think my colleagues have said enough, and anything that I would say would be either redundant or make me sound stupid because they were so eloquent with what they said. I wanted to just understand, I know that you mentioned it originally, but can I see what will be maintained by the city and what will be maintained privately?
Everything will be maintained privately.
So everything will be maintained privately.
Yes.
Okay.
By this developer. They've made a huge commitment as we've gone through this process in a way that's really admirable, I think, towards this very rich and layered park.
Okay, that's great. That's great to hear just because so I found the sticker that I was gonna mention to you and it said Somerville where immense incompetence meets wild enthusiasm. And I think that it's a great representation, and the idea that I believe that this is wild enthusiasm, and I think that it's a great vision, and I would hate for it to just fall apart. And like Andrew said, the park that's there was just done 7 years ago, and to see it in how it has not been maintained, how it looks like crap, I would hate to see this in 10 years from now, and it's just like no more water, no more mist, none of those things. So I support everything that my colleagues have said. I think it's beautiful, and I think I would like to go there.
Yeah, good. I mean, we do this all the time, this kind of shared effort, kind of a developer gives a public park back to the community and essentially
I agree with you.
So it allows for us to kind of create a richer palette of plants and to actually create this kind of fountain, which does require some maintenance. So I think
it does require maintenance, right? All I think about is, Piazza d'Italia that was done in New Orleans by Charles Moore.
Yeah.
How it was this great vision, great development to happen, and it was this community component and developer component, and it's sad to go there now and see it how the vision fell apart, right? So that's always my main concern. I mean, I know that the city of Somerville has their best interest in creating all of these spaces, but I appreciate more that the developer will be maintaining this and making sure that it continues to stay. So those are my comments. I think it's a great presentation, and I mirror what my colleague said.
Frank, can I just,
So much.
if I could, Frank, I want to add relentless advocacy to the bumper sticker because, no, and that's on all levels from community to staff. Sarah, it's
Just
been, you know, we took over a site that had an array of commitments. You know, Platinum was the first big hoop. And then the, you know, development covenant, which is not insignificant, but the civic space was, you know, a major driver. And we ended up not needing the underground rights, but the commitments above grade have maintained. And really, the city's been relentless in making sure that every commitment and promise that was previously made is adhered to. And I think the recent changes to add water and some more activity space will be a driver for the, you know, for the community to want to be there. So I have to thank Sarah. This has been a complicated, long process. And I think we had to promise more than one time that we're really going to build this. Don't be afraid of the past.
Third developer's a charm. It's always the third developer that gets it.
You'll have to make a new bumper sticker. And you'll take out the IN from incompetence. So you'll say, I've forgotten the quote, immense competence. We'll take a
So
look at all these comments, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation.
if I am hearing, I'm going to sort of briefly summarize the commission's comments about the through Block Plaza and the offsite improvements. I would say overall, it sounds like there's a desire for there to be more interconnectedness, and that they're not quite feeling the cohesion of a whole space just yet. With that being said, is that, commissioners, am I very broadly summarizing those comments correctly?
I'm good with that. I think, yeah. A little more.
And that you would like them to come back and have further development of the civic space alongside of the facade that abuts the civic, the through Block Plaza.
Take a look at that.
That's great.
Okay. Great. Sarah, do you want to come back and close out the meeting? Or commissioners, do I hear?
Go right ahead,
vote?
Courtney.
Commissioners, do I have a motion to end this meeting?
I make a motion to end this meeting. To adjourn.
I second that motion, and a martini as well.
Thank you. I'll be one with process and take a roll call vote. Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Andrew Arbaugh.
Yes, please.
The commission has voted to adjourn the meeting. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, David.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you
care,
all.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.